I guess that's the thing. I move around a lot, both physically and also topically. And I like the photography has given me the freedom to do that. I'm not locked in doing one thing over and over and over again.
Welcome to the Red, Green, Blue podcast.
Hello. Today I'm talking to Matt Turley, who's a big-time commercial photographer. He's done major campaigns for Dodge Truck and others. He's got a great agent. Who is your agent now?
My agent is Marianne Campbell.
Marianne Campbell. He just got back from doing a shoot in Chile. And we're going to ask him a little bit about how he works. And a unique thing about this interview, we're doing it at the Sundance Ski Resort, which is owned by Robert Redford and is the namesake for the Sundance Film Festival. So it's kind of an important thing. In fact, in the hallway we're in, there's pictures of Robert, or Bob as he is known around here, around in doing his early work in film. So Ty, what was your first camera?
My first camera was a Nikon FE. It was my dad's.
Dad's. So did you just steal it from him or did he give it to you?
Well, we were trying to figure out a way to attach it to a telescope. So he lent it to me, and that never worked out, but I just started using it. So I guess I kind of stole it. Although when I went to college and was getting more into it, he ended up giving it to me.
Well, that's nice. So
and I still have it with me.
You used
Actually,
it
have it here.
College. You do?
Yeah, I brought it.
Well, that's cool. Let's see it.
Didn't know what was going on here, so I brought it.
Oh, yeah.
Right here. FE from, I think it's from 1982.
That's
and
cool.
all it really had was a 28 millimeter lens on it.
Cool.
But it was great.
Oh, that's awesome. Can you cock it and shoot it for us for the microphone?
Yeah, it's right here.
There we go. I love that noise. That was my first camera as well. My second first camera.
Just shot a blank frame on some sort of film.
Oh, you've got film in it. Whoops.
It's definitely loaded. That roll's been in there for at least 2 years.
You're 2 years. Yeah. So how do you feel that camera influenced your early photography?
Well, just because it was my only camera for, almost 6 years, it had a tremendous influence because it was all I had to shoot with. It was what I fell in love with, was shooting image on this. So
no, that's great. Well, it's really nice. So how did your dad influence your photography?
Well, my dad, I don't think he would consider himself a photographer, but he had this camera and he shot, he documented our family with it. He shot all sorts of slide film and we would do slideshows. I mean, he shot all of our childhoods and, all the events, family events, and it was all shot on this camera. So it also makes the camera kind of extra special. Because anytime, we've had all our slides scanned since, and it's fun to think that all of those were shot on this same camera. And my dad was a thorough photographer. I don't think he ever got into the art of it, or he didn't get too, I wouldn't call it creative. It was just in fact, I think he shot it on auto and f8 the entire time, which isn't a bad way to go.
It's not, is it?
But he documented some really important moments. This was obviously way before you've got, cameras in the palm of your hand on your phone. So it's pretty neat to think that he took this thing as many places as he did. Yeah.
So now it's a common thing where I hear a lot of is that people, their parents were a really big influence on them, and them documenting their family is how they started in photography. So what kind of camera do you use nowadays?
I have a variety of different cameras that I use for different projects. My main commercial camera is a Hasselblad H5 digital, although recently I've kind of mostly replaced that with a Canon 5DS, which is nearly the same quality and just a lot easier to use, a lot less problematic. The Hasselblad's a great camera, but it's kind of a slow machine.
Yeah, it's like a 1 frame per second, something like that.
It often has hiccups. The batteries only do about 200 shots it doesn't do well in low light. But if you have full light, it's an amazing camera, and I've really enjoyed it. But it costs, I think, 12 times as much as a Canon 5DS, which can shoot in low light. And
that's my camera I use now.
5 frames a second, and so those are my main two workhorses. And then my personal camera, I have a Leica M that I take almost everywhere with me, and that's just more for fun.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of that 5DS. I mean, those 50 megapixel files are just huge. In fact, I can't remember. I bought some like 10 128 gigabyte 1000X memory cards when I got it because I was like, boy, this is just choose memory.
Yeah.
But Yeah. So tell us about the shoot you did in Chile. What was it like?
That was for a pharmaceutical. And what was it like? It was, the only reason we were shooting in Chile was to avoid talent fees. I think they saved about $1 million in talent.
Are models cheaper down there?
They're not unionized. So because they're not part of the Screen Actors Guild, they don't get residuals. So they actually get paid more or less the same as far as their day rate. And by the way, this photo shoot was in conjunction with TV. And so in TV world, every time they run the TV commercials, I think it's 13-week cycles, all the talent get royalty checks. And if they're SAG, so anyone in the U.S. So this job could have been shot in Los Angeles. But a lot of pharmaceutical jobs for that very reason are shot overseas. The location didn't really have a whole lot to do with it. Originally, it was going to be in Croatia, then Barcelona, then South Africa, then New Zealand, and finally Chile. And that was just because, I guess if anything, that should say that it didn't really matter where it was shot, just as long as you could find good talent and you could find locations that kind of had more of a contemporary look.
So did you do the video and the stills or just the
No,
stills?
I just did the stills. We had our own crew, it was basically, the only thing we shared was talent and locations, but we had our own sets. It wasn't like a set photography or a second camera kind of setup. We actually had our own stuff. We overlapped a couple of the shots. In several weeks of shooting, there was a few scenarios that we shot next to their camera, but most of our assets that we were shooting were very geared towards print, which is different than TV.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. So what's your relationship like with your agent? I mean, what does your agent do for you? I say this because I think a lot of people really aren't aware how important agents are in the process of photography.
Marianne does a lot of things for me. The first idea that pops into people's mind is, marketing and getting you out there. And she definitely does that. But that's actually kind of a joint effort. We do portfolio shows together a lot, but then she's often on the road with her assistant showing her book. But that's kind of just the tip of the iceberg. She also is very involved in the estimating process, working out fees and kind of a liaison between me and the ad agency. She's much better at that.
She negotiates your rate.
She negotiates the rate, but then anytime there's any kind of hiccup, you're on a set. The best example I can think of is, if you're on a set and, the client or agency want to add a shot, if you don't have an agent, you're kind of stuck on the field having to sort out numbers, which is an awkward situation.
Yeah.
You're kind of in photo mode. You're sitting there taking pictures and they're like, oh, can we do this other scenario? How much is that going to cost? And, it's the wrong time to be busting out a calculator and I would be terrible at that anyway. But what's great about Marianne is I can just say, yeah, well, let's shoot it and we'll have, you guys work it out with Marianne and, or we'll try to shoot it or, basically she can talk to their people. And there's the art buyer on their end is her contact at the agency. So they get to work out all of the, how any changes to the shoot while it's happening. That's another big thing. And then probably the other thing is she gets me in the door to a lot of agencies, just having her name and recognition. She's been in the business for a long time. And, it's kind of nice knowing that, like, if I'm in a city and I want to stop by and visit some creatives, like, she can get me in the door because, if I didn't have her name carrying me in, I know a lot of photographers just can't get into a lot of agencies. You can't just walk in and talk to the lead creative at XYZ agency. But because of my association with her and her reputation, I'm able to make those connections. And it's great that way.
Yeah, that's a huge thing agents do that people don't realize. Like the way a big commercial ad shoot works, it's not like you walk into Pfizer or General Electric or McDonald's or whoever you're going to shoot for and say, hey, look at my portfolio. What they do is they hire an ad agency who's doing like a whole big package. I mean, they're thinking like radio, TV, print, everything. And you're part of that. And then the ad agency talks to an agent, a big agent like the ones Matt's got, and then they get that in touch with the photographer. In a way, your real agent is the art director of the ad agency. But once again, people don't realize how many people are involved in projects like this, how many layers there are. They're really complicated. And that's where agents are really good. Another big advantage to agents is, like Matt was saying there, is they can kind of be the hard-nosed, like, money person. So you can be a good guy and they can negotiate the rate and stuff. I've heard an author with a big time agent said he really liked it because his agent could pressure his editor for more money, the publisher, and he could still, like, it wouldn't affect his working relationship with his editor because it was like somebody else was being difficult. But
yeah, I should say Marianne is, she definitely does that, but she's got her relationship with all of the clients is so good, and she's just amazing with words. And one of the things that really resonated, I spent several years looking, meeting different agents, different reps. And there was actually one big one in a rep agency in New York that was wanting me. But at the end of the day, I didn't feel like they represented me. And I don't like to push. I don't feel like I'm very New York that way. And that's one of the things that I like about Marianne is she gets the job done. She does focus on the business. Well, she's great at business, I should say, but she does it with like a friendships in mind. Of course, and she and I will talk, and I'll be maybe frustrated about something and not know how to, how are we going to address this? And I think it's like like there's no way out of a situation. And then she sees me on the email that she sends to the agency, and I read it, and I'm always like, seriously, every single time I'm like, God, I wish I had, I wish I could articulate thoughts like her, put it together, because she's just really good at that. She's really good at interpersonal relationships. I've never felt like she's, a hard
of course.
pusher
Or she wouldn't be in
hard-nosed.
business if you were,
Well, there are definitely some agents that are that way, and I like her method. I like her style, and that's one of the things where we've really connected on. So
that's great. So does she specialize in a certain type of photography, or how many photographers does she represent?
She has 9 now. Yeah, she just got a couple new ones. One of her older photographers just retired. I wouldn't say that she specializes really. She has, a lot of our photographers have different niches. There's a food photographer. There's a photographer who specializes in shooting kids, lifestyle. There's a definite car photographer. And then some of us are a little more generalist, I would say. I definitely have landscape and a lot of automotive, but have still been approached. Everyone kind of is approached on different projects. And a lot of times we've bid against each other actually and within the group, which is actually not a problem at all. I wouldn't say it's so much specialized in any one genre as much as she kind of has, there's kind of a level of, just kind of an aesthetic that ties it together, even though, it's things as varied as lifestyle to automotive to food.
Oh, that's interesting. So what kind of photographer do you classify yourself out? I mean, it's getting kind of confusing now. You're an outdoors kind of photographer, right? But
yeah, that question's always been a little tough for me. I definitely like shooting outdoors. I'm not a studio photographer. So usually the short answer is I'm a location photographer, but I've shot all sorts of different subjects. I guess the main thing is I don't really want to be pigeonholed. I don't want to be a car photographer. I don't want to be a lifestyle photographer. I don't really even want to be a landscape photographer. One of the things that I enjoy most about my career is up to now is that I've been able to shoot a lot of different things, and I would love to do more things. I would be interested in shooting, more portraits or even stuff in a studio, but I don't want to be any one thing.
Yeah. But
most of my photography has been on location, a lot of travel and tourism, lifestyle, automotive, and some sports.
Some sports, like winter sports, like Olympic kind of stuff?
Well, a lot of different sports. I've done shoots for Bolle sunglasses, and we shot everything from ultramarathoner to professional sailor, competitive sailor, to mountain bikers, to skiers. A lot of different sports, a lot of different environments on 4 different continents. So, I wouldn't say I'm shooting ball sports. I'm not on the sidelines of a NBA game, but that's
kind of stuff.
No, that's probably more to do with the fact that I just never really cared much about that stuff. Sports is not my.
That's fair.
I'm lucky if I can match the ball with the team, like what shape the ball is.
So what's been the most important thing as your development as a photographer?
The most important thing?
Yeah, or most important moments, like kind of landmark events or things that have happened.
The one that I come to first was out of college. I had done an internship in Los Angeles with an automotive photographer, but I kind of realized from that, and we're still good friends, but I realized I didn't want to work in a studio and I didn't want to live in LA. And he's the one that suggested that I reach out and contact a photographer in Idaho named Andy Anderson, who's basically shoots kind of in the same vein that I do now, although that's kind of reversing the timeline there. But I was attracted to his photography, which is amazing. He's just got really beautiful work and he's very celebrated. But more than both of those is the fact that he lives in a small town in Idaho and didn't have, he doesn't shoot in a studio, doesn't have to live in LA or New York. And I ended up working for him. And I would say that was probably one of the most pivotal relationships of my career because of what I learned and the connections I've made and the influence on my photographic style. So yeah, that was
big. Yeah,
that's definitely the big one. I mean, there's been other ones, meeting Marianne.
Who's Marianne?
Marianne's my agent.
Oh, your agent.
Meeting Marianne was also, huge. But actually, Marianne is Andy Anderson's agent. Heather is like best friends with Marianne. So that's kind of how so a lot of things do trace back to me meeting Andy.
Oh, yeah. No, for me, working for Lauren Greenfield was by far the most influential thing. I mean, I felt like I didn't know anything about photography until I actually saw it from the inside. I mean, of course, you have to kind of learn it on your own, like going out and shooting and looking at pictures, but just seeing how a photographer operates, how they negotiate with their agent, how they talk with the client, just navigating the photo world. To me, that was incredibly valuable experience. So what do you like most about your job?
My time. I like that it allows me to do my own thing, really. I mean, I love photography, but I also like a lot of other things in life. And I like that my job has allowed me to pursue both. And even within the photography, I like the variety. I guess that's the thing. I move around a lot, both physically and also topically. And I like the photography has given me the freedom to do that. I'm not locked in doing one thing over and over and over again.
Yeah, no, Matt, he's got a great lifestyle setup. Basically, he has like a Dodge truck, is it?
A Ram
Yeah. Truck. And he has an Airstream and he just goes all over the country and he can just set up camp and work wherever he's at. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I live for that freedom. So.
Yeah, no, that's true. The same thing with me. Whenever I've negotiated a contract or anything, I've always traded money for freedom because freedom's way more important than money, in my opinion, because that's the only thing money's good for is to give you more freedom. So what do you think is most important for you in your creative process? Is it pre-production, the shoot, or post?
Oh, wow. They're definitely all freedom, or all important. I think all three of those are important. Yeah, it's hard to...
Because you do a lot of Photoshop work too, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where, during the while shooting and post are more important for me, but, pre-production is setting the stage, and without on jobs where there's been a few times when I've had jobs where we weren't able to either afford a producer at all, or my producer wasn't able to come along, and you're just, so that's, the producer is basically the one that sets the stage so that I can operate. And that's, without that, it's, it's a huge loss. And then shooting, of course, that's where you're gathering all the stuff. So that it's hard to pull those apart. I can't really say which is most important, but yeah, you are correct. Post-production retouching is something that I would say was probably my relative strength when I was leaving school and when I worked for Andy. That's why I got hired. I don't think I was a especially good photographer, but I did have, for the time, pretty exceptional Photoshop skills. And that has remained today, part of my work.
You still do it all yourself. You don't outsource it.
Yeah, I do. And that's starting to become a problem. I'm kind of in the transition stage of finding a retoucher to handle a lot of the work, because a lot of times on the shoots it's a lot of work doing the post, and I want to be doing other things. And sometimes when jobs are back to back, I'm in the hotel room at night after shooting, retouching the previous job. And the problem is I've always cared too much about the images, and it felt really awkward or odd to have someone else retouch my images because it was such a big part of my process. But at some point, that's gotta give. I imagine I'll
intensive. Really very time consuming.
On certain projects, I've been able to outsource some of the detailing. A lot of times there's kind of busy work making selections or doing, kind of mundane cleanup on images, and I've been able to outsource that. And I think what I'll probably end up doing is, a lot of the easier images I'll probably send to a partner retoucher that works with me, and then reserve the most important images for myself, where I feel like I either because I just want to, because I enjoy it, or because I feel like I need to do it myself. But yeah, retouching is very labor intensive.
Yeah. How long does it take you to retouch, like to do retouching on the shoot?
It totally depends. There's been some shoots where it's relatively simple. It's very rare. I don't really use presets, but there's occasions where I can copy certain elements from one image to another, and I can do, a whole set of images and 10 or 15 images in a day or two. And there's also been times where I've spent, I think my record was 140 hours on one image.
Oh, wow.
Which was not fun.
No. So do you retouch everything you show the client, or do you let them pick and then?
Oh, no. Yeah. No, I send them very unadorned. I like the images that I actually send them to just be straight out of camera. Mm-hmm. Partly because it's easier, and there's no sense in.
Yeah, if they're not going to pick it, I mean, that's just
doing color work on a whole set. If there's a whole bunch that are, maybe, it'd be easier for them to make the selects if I raise the exposure a bit. We had an image that we shot on a couple jobs ago where it was like a evening shot, and I boosted all the exposures so the selection process would be easier. But I don't do any color work until they've selected, because that'd be a waste.
Yeah. So what's the hardest thing about your job?
The hardest thing about my job? I think
you like it all? There's no hard things. I mean,
there's nothing hard at all. It's the easiest job ever. No, I think, if you're talking about the job is like, in general, it's like knowing where to allocate my time and resources when I'm not on an actual shoot. Mm-hmm. When I'm actually shooting, life kind of gets easier in a sense, because I know exactly what I need to do. I have a great team. My producer is awesome. We've worked together for 10 years, and he gets me, I get him, and it's great, because then it's just kind of this clockwork process starts ticking. And so that's actually easier. It's harder when I don't have anything going and I'm trying to decide what kind of projects to work on, where to spend my time, marketing, and granted I have my agent with that, but a lot of it comes down to just personal decisions of, what I want to show. And that's oftentimes difficult, although that probably doesn't sound very difficult, but.
No, it's hard. No, I completely understand. I mean,
there's no playbook, it's not like I'm handed, when you're your own boss, you just have to make your own schedule, and sometimes it's easier to just go skiing.
Yeah, no, it's funny. Like I worked up here at the Sundance Labs, is where they invite directors and they workshop movies. It's a good experience, but it was weird because I wasn't like the leader. And so I just kind of showed up and people told me what to do. And then I went home and I was like, wow, this is really nice. I don't have to worry about the budget, or are we going to go over time, or I don't have to fire people. It's just like a dream that somebody else is doing all that. But that's the thing about photography. You have to be all photographers are very self-motivated, because nobody's going to tell you how to be a photographer. It's like something you have to kind of invent on your own. So Lauren Greenfield is by far the most proactive, hardest working person I've ever met in my life. And same thing with Mary Ellen Mark when I worked with her. What do you feel is unique about the way you photograph?
In today's world, I think it's kind of hard to be completely unique. There's just so much being done, and there's always an element of it's already been done pretty much. Yeah, truly unique. I'm not sure what the answer would be, but I think,
of course, everybody's ever done anything.
I think clients like the fact that I do my own retouching. I think they like, I was a science major for years before I was a photographer or a photography student. And I still kind of have a methodical way of looking at things that both hampers and helps my process. There's times when it'd be nice if I could just loosen up and be a shoot from the hip photographer. But I think that's one of the reasons I always like large format, and the way that I still shoot is very, I like as many things to be controlled until I get to what's exactly in front of the camera. And so, a lot of things are locked off, and that helps with the post-production as well. A lot of times we're compositing things. So the more things that are bolted down in the set and the shooting platform and everything, then of course, ultimately you just have to kind of like let things go and respond to spontaneous moments. But I've worked with different photographers. I've seen a lot of other photographers work. I know that, that's only one way to slice it. Some photographers just kind of shoot by the hip and run around and, have a much more organic process. And I kind of have a hybrid organic / inorganic.
Well, yeah, because you work out in the environment, but you exercise a lot of control. I mean, if you were completely controlled, you'd just be in a studio and introduce everything. So nothing, and also like photographing people, to me, those are like, even if you're using professional models, it's a huge variable. Whereas if you're shooting product, it's you can literally control everything.
Right.
And I know it's different. I mean, every photographer has like their personality type fits with the style of photography they do and the way they like to work. And there's no consistency. Like it's all completely different across the board. And that's why you have more so than I think any other discipline. I feel like because photography is such a small field, but it's so diverse that it's got these extremes in the ways of working. And also writers my mother's an English professor, so I've hung out with some writers. Writers, like they all like to sit in front of a computer screen and, write words. That's consistency. But with photography, your experience, like the type of photography you do dictates your experience. And so product, outdoors, or like me, like documentary is like very different types of people, very different experiences involved with the work. And that just changes you as a person in itself. This was really great. So why do you live here up at Sundance? Great sandwiches.
Sandwiches are great. Yeah. I have just always loved this. When I went to school here, I started skiing on Timpanogos in the backcountry. And then I ended up working at Sundance as a ski instructor. And I fell in love with the mountain first, Timpanogos, but also the resort. I love, it's quite unlike most any other resort. I love how much restraint Sundance has used, implemented in its design. It's not, a sprawling, huge high-rise.
Yeah, it doesn't have like mega hotel, and they don't play rock music at the ski lift.
No,
things like that. Like at big Park City ones. I've just never understood that. Like I'm sitting on the ski lift line, I'm listening to like Britney Spears.
Right.
Why?
Yeah, I think and that's, the one thing that I like what Sundance is, what Redford's made it is it lets the mountain do the talking, and the mountain is spectacular. It doesn't need, a bunch of accessorizing or, it doesn't need to be any bigger. A lot of people boo-hoo it because the lifts are slow and the terrain's relatively mellow, but I love the vibe up here. And then, I feel super lucky that I'm able to have a place up here. Yeah, it's one of my favorite places in the whole world.
That's great. Have you run into Robert Redford up here?
I've never talked to him. I've sat next to him at the bar and on the ski hill. I get the impression that he likes his privacy about as much as I like mine, or probably more so.
Oh yeah, well that's of course
if he starts a conversation, I'd love to talk with him, but I don't know. I see him a lot actually, and
well, that's good. That's a respectful thing to do. But well, it's been really great talking to you, Matt, and I think you shared a lot of really interesting things. Thanks a lot. And again, I'd like to remind the listeners that the best way to learn photography is to look at photography and make photography, or look at films and make films. And then interviews like this let you know how to navigate the world, how to get what agents do, things like that. So thanks a lot for listening, and tune into our next episode. Bye.